Okay, so we're gonna make some bread. Betty is nicely risen. She was down here earlier today and I fed her and now she's all bubbled up. And you can see the bubbles, I think, in the starter here. And I've got my bowl and my flour on the scale. I put in some organic white. And I'm gonna throw in some organic spelt flour. Not a lot, just, so I've got about 850 grams of white. And I will throw in some of this nice whole grain spelt. And then I will also throw in some organic whole wheat. Let's take it to, oh wow, look at that, almost 1,000 grams, or 1 kilo. Okay, I'm gonna measure out the water now. And for 1,000 grams, we're gonna do 700 grams of water. But right now I'm just gonna do 650. I'll save 50 grams of water for when I add the salt later, just to help incorporate the salt. All right, so there's our water. And I'm gonna heat it up just a little bit so it's not so cold. Okay, so I'm just gonna whisk my flours together. And to this mixture, before I add Betty, I'm just gonna let her sit for another little bit, I will add the 650 grams of water. And just let the water and the flour get to know each other so that the flour is nice and hydrated. This is hard to do with one hand.
I'm sorry.
So you're not looking to totally knead the dough, but just make sure there's no dry flour sitting at the bottom. So I'm gonna have to get in there with my hands a little bit and just make sure that it's all incorporated as much as possible. And this is what these crazy bread people call a shaggy mess. So that's pretty good. You can see how soft it is, but it's nothing right now. It's just basically flour and water. All right, and then you can clean off your hands, get all this off. We're gonna wait for this shaggy mass of dough to get to know each other for like a half an hour. That's what they call the auto lease. In the meantime, I'll get my salt ready. And for that much flour for this recipe, I usually do about 18 grams of salt. And it looks like a lot of salt, but it really isn't when you're all done. And I'll zero out my scale again. And remember, we still have to add another 50 grams of water to that mixture. So I'll just mix up the salt and 50 more grams of water. There. Put that aside and we'll add it when we add Betty. Just measuring up my starter, I'm gonna put about 120 grams of starter into this lovely mess. And that should be enough to get this going. Let's just check how much I have left. That's about right. There's about 50 grams left in the jar. I'll give it a little bit more flour and water and put that baby in the fridge after. So we are going to mix this with wet hands so that it doesn't totally stick to us. Now that this has rested a little bit, you can see that it's gotten a little stretchier. So I'm just gonna fold it in together. Get it all incorporated. And at this point, we've got our water and salt mixture. We can pour it, add it to our autolyse. And it's gonna feel like it's never gonna mix in, but trust me, it will. Let's try and gather all your loose bits up. If you have one of those dough scrapers, that works too. Just kind of squeeze the dough until all that watery liquid gets incorporated. Yum. That's good.
Gross sound.
And I would mix it a little bit for like 2 or 3 minutes just to make sure that the water is completely incorporated. See how it doesn't stick to your hands when your hands are wet? So it's good. Okay, and make sure you wet your hands again. And this is gonna be what we call the stretching and folding of the dough. And make sure you go all the way around, go nice and high. And this is the second, third time I'm doing this, and you have to do it every half an hour, at least 4 times. And it really develops the gluten. Okay, that's it. Now I'm gonna put another timer on for half an hour, and I'll come back and do the same thing. Cover it. So dough has been proofing for a couple of hours since all the stretch and folds, and I've dumped it out onto the counter. And we're gonna let it sit here and rest. I pre-shaped it just by kind of doing that with my trusty old dough scraper into balls. Okay, we're gonna dust the tops of these, have been resting enough. And I did the same to this one, and I flipped it over. So this is sticky, this is not sticky. So the unsticky side is down. So what I'm gonna do is almost like a last fold. 1, 2, 3. It's still kind of stuck to each other. And then I'm going to do the last shape on it. So it looks kind of like a sausage. And tighten it up nice so that it has a nice tight skin here. And grab my banneton, which I put lots of rice flour into. And I'm going to put it in the banneton for the night. And I'm gonna just stitch this seam a little bit better so it doesn't open up. It shouldn't, it's got a pretty good seam on it. And you can see that it's already nice and plump. Okay, I'm gonna do the same to this one. So this is the part you haven't seen, but I have to flip this over. See, sticky side on that side. Make sure I get a little bit extra flour on the ends here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and this last one will roll it up. So there's our ball. Doing this one round so it fits nice in our banneton basket. Sort of cupping motion. You can use your scraper or you can use your hand. So just a little bit of extra flour for this guy. And then we flip it upside down and put it in the basket. So you can see how this one might need a little bit of an extra stitch. There, it should be good for the night. Extra flour so things don't stick. and they can go in the fridge for the night. Good night, bread. See you tomorrow. All right, we're ready to break our bread. The next day, I'm just preparing a piece of parchment. I crumple it up so that when it goes in, it's easier to manage into the pot, which has been heating in the oven at 500. There's our little bread. And it's cold from the fridge, which is good. It's a good thing if it's cold, because once it hits that oven, it'll spring up nicely. So I'm just going to invert it onto my parchment with the help of my pizza peel. And there is a nicely formed loaf. I will dust off some of this flour. It's okay if there's a little bit, because it's nice to have that contrast. And I will take my lame, or my razor blade, and do a nice little cut so that it can expand in the right spot. You can do little decorations if you want to, little extra cuts. So that's what it looks like before it goes in. And now get it into our pot, which is heating in the oven. That's a hot pot. I always put an extra piece of parchment on the inside so that the bottom of the bread doesn't burn. I've had it burn before. Transfer into the pot. Put our lid back on. Make sure to wear oven mitts. Throw it in, buonanotte. Set the timer, 25 minutes. And then we'll take the lid off and cook it for another 20. So, got 10 seconds left on our timer. I'm going to pull open the oven and take that lid off so you can see what's been happening in here. Oh yeah, it looks like it came up quite nicely. Back in it goes. And I'm going to turn the oven down to 450 and set that timer for another 20 minutes. So we'll see what it looks like in 20 minutes. Okay, so the timer has gone off and it's time to grab our loaf of bread. Looks pretty good so far. Looks pretty good. You could leave it in for a few more minutes if you want to get it darker. The darker the better, they say, because it just has that much more flavor. There we go. It's got that nice, really hard top. Let's have a look at the bottom. Not too bad. Nice and browned. This is the ear. That opened up lovely. So enjoy.
Ooh, that's nice.